We'll be moving on in this class on HTML. And a quick introduction to the class, or introduction to the class, is that this class is for HTML development. Is a part or is a section of the full stack development course, and the course website is actually on here. Let me show you. Good to remember to put this https and o&o.com/school, and here we have the computer class and web programming. So this is part of the web programming course on the website, and basically it's teaching how to become a full stack developer. Don't mind me, I'm not showing my face today. I'll probably show you in the next class, but my own name is Ola Badeoladokun, and Ola for short. If you have any questions, we have the Teams class team on Microsoft Team, where you can ask questions directly if you have issues with anything with the class or anything related to the class. We can actually discuss amongst all the other students. And I want to take this time to welcome everybody that is joining into the class live. This is a recording, so if you're watching this later, thank you for joining also. So we'll do a quick recap of last class. In the last class, we talked about HTML, what HTML is. We touched based about some little, well, we did some introduction on technologies related to the web. So as we all know it, we interact with the web using what we call clients. An example of a client is a web browser that understands HTML content, and we talked about how the transaction between the client and server using the HTTP protocol. We also talked a little bit about the structure or the form of HTML. Basically, how is HTML understood, how is interpreted in the client, and how we can get started in making an HTML. If you remember properly, we talked about HTML5, which is the current version for HTML as of year 2020. And what this gives you or gives us is the ability to format our text documents right into an HTML format. Now we can use things called tags to form elements, and those elements contain our content, what we wish to present on the web. So for example, we talked about the body, we talked about h1. H1 is the header, right? Header tag. And we talked about the p tag, and we talked about a few other ones like the body, the head, right? Can you still remember all those concepts? The body, head, we talked about HTML tag itself. Let me just quickly open up an example that we worked with last time. So if I come here to documents, intro to HTML, right, we talked about this, right? We had the H1, H2, H3, and like a paragraph p tag. And also we understood that HTML is just plain text, but kind of like a descriptive text, right? We can open with, and if you try this on your computer, you can actually open it with other applications such as a notepad, which is what we are using to edit, right? We can see in here, let me quickly change the format to make it a little bit visible for people watching over the web. Maybe 22 is good. Okay, so we have the head, right? We have the doc type, we have HTML, we have the meta, right, with the title that actually talks to the client, right? And then we have the body. The body right, that contains the content that is visible to the humans. Okay, so basically, this was all we did last class. We'll be moving on from that. Assignments. Did we check out our assignments? Did we do our assignments? So for the assignments, if you didn't, you can go to any of these links. I'm not sure if I can click on them right now. Oh, I did. It went. Okay. Oops. I only wanted one. Okay. So here, for example, we can see a list, right, of tags that are available, and there are a lot. Right, we have the doc type, we have something that defines comments, right, we have base, we have, and if you can see, some do say not supported in HTML5, so those have been retired tags, right. Well, the possibility, so if you, the question is this element that says not supported in HTML5, they are not working again. Wouldn't they be working again? Uh what the what this denotes is that is not supported. Remember, we said HTML has different versions. So here it's just telling you that in HTML5 it's not supported. So if you have a web client, right, that strictly interprets HTML5, it wouldn't show up, right? It would be interpreted as text. But if you have like a more matured client, like Internet Explorer, for example, maybe Chrome, they will be able to support other versions. So if you use, if you were to write your HTML in version 4, 4.5 or 4.1 or maybe 3 or 2, the old school way, it might work. But compatibility is just better to do your things, a more conforming way. So if it's HTML5 supported, use the HTML5 because that's the way to go. And in this class, we will be writing strictly in HTML5. Okay, and like I'm saying, the list goes on, right? And also, this is a good resource in general to look up information about HTML and also to have an hands-on. So for example, you don't have a computer, you're trying with your phone, you can actually go to w3schools.com and have a lot of hands-on with all this code and HTML5. Okay, so moving on, let's quickly talk about HTTP. I'm brushing on this because the last time I kind of like went over it. So I want to talk a little bit in details about what is going on and what we mean by HTTP. So if you remember, HTTP is Hypertext Transport Protocol. It's basically how client server communicates over the internet. And in general, for HTTP to work, it does, it's like we said, it works on IP, needs to know the IP. So it's actually called a TCP kind of connection to the server. And just to go back into this a little bit, remember the client is the web browser in our case, and we put in like www.channelono.com, right? We actually, like I said, the web browser will look for or ask who is channelono.com. So that will be the second step, and find out the IP, right, which is the internet protocol address of the server that's supposed to respond to channelono.com. Once that is done, the web browser then sends what is known as a request. Okay, the request is a package of messages, or is a message with a bunch of information within that, right? That has been sent to the server. The server receives that information, processes it, and then respond back with a response message, which also has a bunch of information. So, looking at the request structure, what we have here is that in the request message, you have something called the start line, which has the target or request URL, channel o and o.com, for example. It becomes more complex, so sometimes you can actually look for like a resource. So you're looking for channel o and o.com slash something, right? And then you can actually also pose a query to it. So you can actually say channel o and o.com, I don't know, ID something. And then this information is contained in the URL. Then you have the request type. What kind of request you're making, right? Is it a get, put, post, delete? Don't worry, we'll cover this more in details in the different module of this class. But for right now, you know that the request type is sent. We also have the HTTP version. Currently, the most common one is 1.0. There's 2, version 2. So there's version 1, there's version 2 of HTTP. Depending on what the client supports, it would say, okay, make this request with HTTP version 1 or version 2. There's like a lot of differences. So even for HTTP 2, basically this request structure is different. It's called frames rather than a message. And then in the HTTP request, you have the header, right? The header contains all the information in the start line alongside with other information such as the user agent, which is the name, right? Like you're using Mozilla, right? Or Chrome or Safari, the user agent, or Firefox, right? Yes, that's the user agent. It puts that information in the request. Also, you have the accept type, which is like the type of message that is that the client supports, right? And then you have the accept language, and also it's not 100% always available, but you have the request body. So request body is all the other content that you want to send to the server. Okay. This will come in handy in another module, and we're gonna talk about it more then. And I guess this header is the same. So let me quickly actually jump back into my yes, sure, go ahead. Yes, yes, that's correct. So basically, in the layman's term, yeah, that's the difference. Uh, so this is response. Okay, so let me just present from here. Hopefully, I can do that. Yeah, so basically HTTP versus HTTPS. The S in front of it actually just says secure, right? So in the layman's term, HTTP is not secure, HTTPS is secure. What makes it secure? Well, that's more complicated, but just for the sakes of it, HTTP is more or less plain, right? So when you say plain, you're sending everything as is from the client to the server. So assuming you sending everything as is and you are sending something to a server located on your like in your house, right? It's not an issue. But when you're sending something across country, like let's say you're sending something from I don't know what's going on here. You're sending something from your house to my house, right? The message would have traveled over many other computers or devices, right? And every person in the middle can see all that um, plain information because it's plain, right? So everybody can read it. So they can read your password, they can read your credit card, they can read all your information. So the HTTPS, what it does is that in a layman's term, it transforms your data into encrypted data. So basically, encrypts it before it leaves the client, right? And sends it on a one-way journey to the server, and only the server can read that information. No one else in the middle can read it, theoretically. Okay? So going back to this, and that's to answer the question: what's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? So you have a response, right? Like we said, for every request, the server processes the information and sends back a response. So in your response message from the server, you have the status line also, and the status line says the status code, the status text, and the HTTP version. Basically, the server's HTTP version. Also, you have the header, which shows information from the start line, right? Inclusive of other information, well, from the status line, including other information such as the server name, right? Same way we have the agent name, right? The client name. You have the server name. So is it Apache? Is it IIS? Is it something else? JBoss server, right? It sends it back. The content length, how much content am I sending back to you, right? And other data provided by the server. It could be, there are lots of different server responses, right? So it's going to be available there in the header. And also then you have the body. The body contains whatever you've requested, or whatever is being sent from the server, right? Based on your request. So do you have any questions on that? Okay, since there are no questions, we're just going to go quickly to investigate this ourselves. So more or less like an hands-on. Let me see if I still have this thing opened. Yeah, I still have it open. So here, I will push the favorite F12 button again. And we're going to have this little... Oh, it's a F12 button. But it could be different on each browser, but it's usually F12. I'm gonna make this bigger a little bit so that you can see. Can you see what it's showing? Yeah. Okay. Now let's see. How am I going to get this? Okay. I think I need to. And well. Oh. Nope. Is it typing? Okay, this is why live demo is kind of like tricky. Some things you want to show and computer gods won't cooperate with you. Okay, let me just open something here that is already opened. Click a new tab, go to google.com. Actually, let's not do Google, let's do bing.com. Bing is a good search engine. Unlike everybody say Google everything, you can Bing everything. Okay. Well, what was I saying here? I don't care. So here we've requested an information from bing.com and it has sent us a response, which is what we are looking at on the screen. So for short, right, we requested for a document over HTTP client over using HTTPS, but the version of the HTTP is not HTTPS or not HTTPS. Like I explained earlier, is just telling you that it's secured. From the information we got back, we got back HTML document that is beautifully laid out here. So just to go and do the same thing I did with the F12, I'm going to look for developer. Okay, developer option is here. Okay, what I'm showing you here is just to get to this tool that we're going to use for right now to investigate the HTTP messages. So I've opened up the developer tab that is usually available. Let me see. Okay, good. You can press, how do you open developer tab? You can actually press F12 or find in your menu the developer tools. So here I have the developer tools, right? Right now I've popped it open. Let me put it to, I want to duck to the right. Oh, I don't know why it's like this. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm just gonna make it half the screen so everybody can see what's going on here. So like I said, we're just gonna pick something, or let me just go back to bing.com and push enter. What this thing is doing right now is recording every communication over the network between my client and the server. Okay, so I'm just gonna look for here. I'm just gonna look for something that is easy to look at. So bing.com. Okay, let me just, I can click on this one. So can you see what is on this side? Can you see this? Yeah, can you see what is written there? Or let me see if I can make it bigger. I don't think so. Let me try. Nope. But can you see this part? Okay, perfect. So this is what we just talked about. So we made an HTTP request, right? And we have logged it here, right? So here you can see we have the header, you have the body, right? You have parameters, you have cookie, you have timing. This is timer is basically like how long it took, right? While you're waiting, when you send the request, and the content that is sent back, like how long it took to download it. This is based on how fast everything is from your client to the server. So let's quickly look at the header. So in the header, like I said, you have the URL, right? Like the start line. You have the URL where you're going, right? We're going to https www.bing.com. You have the request method, so we're getting, right? We have the request method of get. We have the status code of 200, right? Also here it's supposed to show us the what's it called, the code, but 200 is just okay, so I guess that's why it is green. Then we have the request header, right? It says accept type, right? The types that it can accept, right? It can accept, this client can accept application, XML, right? And others, right? It has some other wildcards here. They call it wildcard, meaning like any other thing you can accept, right? The encoding, the language, right? English, US. So, things like this information, if somebody's using a different language on their computer, right? The client is probably going to say, hey, I need your website in a different language, right? You can find the information from there. Then it has some cookie, it has a cookie, right? I guess I've used Bing before, so it sent it over to the server. Also, you have the hosts and some other stuff. And here you see the user agent. It disguises as Mozilla, although, am I using Mozilla? Huh. Well, I don't know why it says it's Mozilla. Well, it's Windows Edge. And then you have the response, right? So in the response, you have the cache control, you have encoding type, you have a lot of other information, right? Accepting and stuff. Oh, can you still see me? Okay. Sorry, I'm here. I'm getting a message that my video has stopped working. Okay. For as long as you can still see, thank you. Next to the header, right, we have the body. So you have the start line, right, where things that are in common usually. You have the request header, response header, and then you have the body. So you can have a request body, but in this time around, there's no request body, okay? But there's a response body, and response body. If you look at this, although it looks like gibberish, soon enough we will soon understand it, but at least a few of these things we should understand. This is the HTML that is displaying this, that is sent back, okay? So this is all HTML payload, they call it, right? And just to describe what that is, let me quickly do something. Let me explore this elements window. It will be more structured for us, right? You have the head, right? Remember, we have the head with the meta information, right? Such as the title, right? We have the title over here. We have the body, we have divs and other stuff, okay? We have other tags that we've not actually discussed about. So any question about HTTP? No questions? Okay, we'll move on. So moving on, we have, in addition, so here I'm going to introduce a different topic, which is called CSS. Basically, what CSS means is cascading style sheet, and I call it the icing on the cake. So if you look at the cake, or if you're familiar with a bakery, the bake a cake, it looks plain, right? But once they start putting icing on it, it looks beautiful. So CSS is the way to beautify formats and change the default HTML content. It influences how HTML elements are rendered on the client. But let us understand one thing. The client still has its own way of representing the data, right? So although you do CSS, it might be close, right? But always, most of the time, it depends on how the client wants to interpret it. That's just what I mean by that. But more or less, CSS is supposed to say, okay, this is how I want it to look like, and cool. CSS is quite simple, like HTML. Like I said, HTML, this class is so simple, like it's really easy to understand. So to add CSS to your HTML, it's as simple as including the style with the style that we want within the beginning tag of the targeted element. Remember, we talked about tags, right? Text beginning with the lesser than symbol, a slash, and ending with the greater than symbol. Yeah, so basically that is how we add styles to HTML. Is that simple? Well, to start. So if we talk about HTML, we need to think about waterfall. Remember, it has that cascading in the name. So what that means is that your CSS, your styling, gets transferred to the children elements. In another word, means that the styles that you apply to the parent HTML element would affect all the children elements within it. So an example here is that you have the body, and then you style the font size to 10 pt, 10 points. What you have now is that the P element, the paragraph element within that HTML body, right, would also have the font size of 10 points, and also any other elements within that body, right, within the beginning and the ending. Let me see if I can I write on this? Oh, no, I can't. Okay, from the beginning right to the end, you would have the same 10 points unless there's another style to change it. Okay, so how do we start with HTML and CSS? Well, how do we start with CSS? Well, what we can do is this: we can modify our last project file, which is our first HTML. And in this, right, all we have to do is add the star phrase, or what they call it in a technical term is the parameter, right, or property. So you add the star property to the element, and you just make sure that you follow the HTML5 standards by adding an equals and quotes, right, as described there. So for example, you have the div tag, right, with the style, with a style and the quotes, right? So whatever you want to be the style will be within. And then the other thing we need to understand or learn in this before we actually start using CSS is what are the properties that we want to change. So basically, what's the name? How is it called? Right? So you have like font size, you have color, you have font family, and just like HTML tags, there are a ton of them. Okay, you just have to find them out and know them. And then the other thing we need to know is like I said earlier, the property name and the value. So what values you can actually assign to this. So for example, like font size, you want to assign the font size, right, in points, in relative to something like a percent, or in pixels. So pixels, points, and relative number. And then which color, right? So if you use a color style, or you want to change the color property, right, you can change it to a number, a text, right, or to what they call X. We'll get back into that. So you put like a it's called hashtag, that symbol, right, and put in like a value, which is the X value for the color. And we can talk about it more on the hands-on. And then all you have to do is save it, right, and view it in the web browser. The web browser is your HTML interpreter, right? It can read HTML. It does that for the web. So hands-on, but before I go on hands-on, do you have any questions? No questions. So we go and do hands-on. So let's play with CSS a little bit. I don't know why my okay. Sorry about that. My internet is not my internet. My computer is a little bit slow today. I don't know why. But it's well. So we're gonna use this file, our first HTML file that we were working on, and I'll just quickly save it as guess. I'm going to save it as my second HTML file. And just like I said earlier or in the last class, make sure if you're using Notepad to rename this to .html and change the file type to all files. Oh, okay. Something just happened. Can you still see me? Okay, great. So I'm just gonna make this big a little bit and just explain some things we can do here. So like I said in the slide, right, you have the style, and we can basically create a style like this, right? So for example, let's go with the font size, right? I want it to be 10 pt, right? We'll enter it like this and we end it with the semicolon. So we have the property name, right? So the font size, which means like whatever we're looking at, we want the size to be 10 points. Okay, so once we save this, cascading, right? So even if you have the elements starting by themselves, or we have them within each other, right? Because remember, we can create elements and we can put anything we want inside of it. So assuming I've put a div here, div, right? And end, right? This is ending div, right? This is the beginning one, right? And then I say color, for example. So style, quote color. Let's make this red. Okay, so we save this and we come here. We'll see that both the H3 and the P, so these two right here, right, will become red. Okay, it's not magic. A lot of people get excited at this step, right? You can actually, yes, because it's not going to affect the first two lines, because remember this style, right, is below them. It's not surround, it's only surrounding. Let me, it's good to do this, to put a tab in between, right? You can actually see that it's only affecting the tag and whatever is inside of it. So for example, like this point, right, let's put it as 30, right? It's going to affect everything within this, unless, I remember, unless we change it here. So let's say font dash size is what? Let's make it bigger, right? 50, right? And we save this, we're actually going to see that everything is 30, but whatever it's in here, right, is 50. And here you see that it's not actually showing, is because I didn't put the PT in front of it. So once I put the PT, you're going to see that whatever is below is bigger, right? It's bigger than this, right? So, and if you can see, by convention, remember H3 should be smaller than H2, but look at it, it's bigger, right? So you can do a lot of other things. You can do, just think about it, you can apply different things. You can change the background. So for example, background, let's go to H3, right? It says style equal to, again, you have the quotes, and we're going to put something like background dash color, right? Red and blue. It's gonna look terrible, I think it's red and green, right? Red and blue is going to look terrible. Let's see. It's not too bad. Right? So basically, I mean, we are going closer to actually looking like this. If, believe it or not, right, soon enough, we'll be close to doing something like this. This channel, oh, I know.com, right? We'll be doing things close to this, okay? It looks simple, it looks hard, but don't worry, it's not too hard. So what we have here now is, for example, right, we have the color, background color, we can change the fonts, and we can actually do something like font family. Let me guess, font family. You have one in mind? Let me see if this works. Times Roman or Roman times. What's a good font family font that's on the computer? I mean, basically, you can change the fonts. Let's see, Arial. Is it Arial? Oh, I could be wrong with this, and I'll probably cut it out if I'm wrong. Yep, I'm wrong. I didn't change it because what I mean, this is just an example, but you can do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things, even this. Okay, I'm going to refresh this. Is it false? I think it's false. No, it's not false. Visibility is either visible or, well, let's actually use something more concrete to edit this. So on this left side, I'm just going to play around with this tool that we have. Also in the we have this in the what should I call it now? We have this in the developers tab, right? So yeah, this is wrong. What's visibilities? Hidden. Okay, so visibility hidden. I don't know why we would take so much time and come here and we're not seeing anything, right? Because we hid everything. So for example, let's move this down a bit to this H1, right? We can check visibility here and save it, right? We're going to actually not see an H3, sorry, right? It's there, right? It's there, but it's just not visible. Okay, so moving on. I mean, this is how basically you add CSS, right? You style it, you make it colorful, you do things like actually there are a lot of things you can do. If we go here and there's something wrong with this div, okay, I'll just ignore that for right now. Let me take this out. Go ahead. Okay, so we took a little bit too much on that. What else we can do? So basically, more of CSS. We can actually detach this CSS from the element itself, and we can put it at the top of the file, meaning that we can actually hold on, I have lost total control of this thing. Okay, it's just doing its own thing, right? So basically we can use the tag. There's also a style tag that we can use, and basically we can directly target the elements by naming the elements and creating the CSS within it. Another example or good thing to know is that we can actually nest it. So the way we have our HTML nested within each other, we can actually nest our CSS also. So for example, we can do div and h1, right, and target the background color of this. So for example, if we have like this, right, we have the div and then we have the h3. If we want to copy the style for this one and not affect any other h3 in the whole documents, right? We can nest it within. So we put the parent tag and the child tag. So the parent tag is this div and the child tag is this one. Okay, and Anton, I'm gonna skip that for right now. So that will be the homework. Any questions? Okay, so we're at the end of the today's session, and basically for references, you can go to the class website on channel.com/schools, actually /school, not schools, and you'll be able to also contact me directly if you want. Yeah, that's what you get if there's no content. And at channel O and O, Ola at channel.com, and also you can go to w3schools.com for more hands-on. Thank you for joining today's class. The assignment is to go over this presentation, so I'm going to make this available on the class website, and I'm going to make it available tonight. And what you want to do is this. So I'm going to upload this file, right, for the class 2. I think I'm going to upload the class 1 also. I didn't. We're going to be able to download this from the class website and make use of this style sheet outside of the tag itself. So you move it into the style tag, right, and use it to tag it. So I don't want to see the styles within the element. I want it outside. Okay, so all you have to do is create a style tag anywhere. Usually you would create it anywhere in the header or at the top, and you'll be able to address this. If you have any questions, you can talk in the Teams or contact me directly. Okay, that's the assignment. Thank you for joining. See you same times next week. Thank you and bye-bye.